Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Okay, guys, I wanted to make a post so that at least one other person is aware that what I'm about to describe exists. I've never talked about this to anyone else before because it's just so difficult to describe and it sounds completely made up. But I assure you it's real. I figured /x/ would be the most appropriate place on 4chan to talk about this. So here goes. Of course, everyone knows about first-person perspective. People live their entire lives from their own perspective and are usually unaware of it because they can't experience life any other way. I'm here to talk about the fact that there exists a first-person perspective beyond the usual kind of first person. I would have to describe this perspective as being like the perspective of reality itself or something. For some reason, I seem to have this perspective. No other person can have this viewpoint because otherwise I should be able to see what they see, which doesn't happen. It doesn't give me any other special form of awareness either. I basically experience life like anyone else, just with an occasional meta-awareness that I have some bizarre frame of reference that others don't. I don't know what this means or why this even exists. I'm not any better than anyone else because of it. I'm just some random dude with a slightly unusual view of the world. I just wanted to share this information with some anons that might find it interesting because I don't think anyone has ever considered something like this before. If someone has, I would be glad to read about it. Like I said, this is difficult to describe because it's something that everyone has in one sense, but only I have in another. Pick only marginally related, I chose it to illustrate that only I could possibly have this. Sorry if this post comes across as self-centered, but one of the main reasons this is such a strange thing is that it doesn't make logical sense for there to be more than one of it.
I'm going to share something strange that's happened to me since I was a child. A thought comes into my mind which goes, dude, we exist. And then it becomes deeper like, dude, we exist. Do you realize how amazing it is? The fact that we are actually here and this whole thing is not an inconceivable void where not even darkness could exist. And then I feel like I'm watching from someplace far away, as if I was seeing the universe from a place far away.
There are many paths to loss of ego. Psychoactive and psychoaffective drugs are one of the most common and prominent. However, you can in fact reach this kind of breakthrough experience without any external drugs. It has been reported in meditators and in individuals that have lucid dreams. It is also common in peoples with various mental orders, such as schizophrenics, who are greatly misunderstood by society, and scientific studies have proven that some of them have these breakthrough moments daily and exist in both experiences at once, and that when they hear voices that are not their own, their brain's auditory center is activating, meaning they are actually hearing something internally. Practice meditation-based grounding exercises to help ground yourself in this reality again. Anyone that truly experiences psychosis experiences fear during the experience.
It sounds like you experienced some kind of dissociation. I've had similar experiences following a bad fall that culminated in a minor stroke I had when I was 19. The feeling would hit me suddenly, particularly in moments where my brain is processing faces that I know. Looking dead on at someone while talking with them, for example, and I would feel immediately outside of the conversation and outside of the perspective of myself. It was like a mental pan out of whatever interaction I was just having, and to deal, I'd take inventory of the facts, where I am, who I am speaking with, who I am, what we're talking about, and what's happening in my head. More accurately, I wasn't really taking inventory as if I'd forgot, but it felt almost as though I would all at once be presented with this information to ground me. I'd carry on the conversation like everything was normal, but when I'd try to explain the experience, I haven't really found anyone who could relate. 4 years later and I've learned it's considered a fugue state, but from physical causes rather than psychological. I can say that it doesn't really impact my life or anything like that, just very disconcerting at first. It's gotten much better now that I'm used to it.
Yeah, that does sound like a very intense out-of-body experience or fugue-like state. Very interesting indeed, and no, I have never come across an idea such as that. Except with perhaps sleep paralysis, locked-in-the-box syndrome, and/or drug experiences. I am not a psych guy myself, but I had an interesting discussion with my friend who has done many drugs before with good and bad effects. One friend postulated to me that it was intriguing that we have never actually seen ourselves. His reasoning being that all we have ever perceived of our outward experiences was either told to us or viewed in the reflection of light in a mirror or water, etc. So he was saying that technically you have never seen yourself as others do from their own perspective. And an interesting viewpoint which I had never really taken into account. Then my other friend who has done many drugs said that he has seen himself in a way of out-of-body experiences while on acid. Can you say that you have seen yourself as I have described?
Stroking on here. I don't know if I'd consider it an out-of-body experience. I know I'm on X and all, but I'm pretty much here for the spoopy stories. Don't really believe in stuff like out-of-body experiences. In my opinion, it's purely due to the residual damage that my brain couldn't repair after the stroke. Before the stroke, I'd experienced sleep paralysis a few times growing up. It's definitely not like that. It's not really similar either. Never done any intense hallucinogens, so I can't speak to that, but I can say that it is similar, where I felt like I had déjà vu for a solid 2 hours. When I have these experiences, the best thing I can liken it to is déjà vu, except minus the remembering part. It's not like there's something that's happening that's reminding me of something else. It's like my brain is presently reminding itself of exactly what's going on in that moment, and I am outside of it. Just distant enough from the present to feel like it isn't actually happening, but logically knowing better than that. I've never seen myself in an out-of-body experience kind of way, like watching myself do something outside of myself. I don't really get how people can do that or recall things in such a way. Sometimes when I try to recall specific moments where I have this feeling, I feel like I am viewing it from a third-person POV, but obviously I'm experiencing and reliving it through my own eyes.
OP, I don't know if I have the same issue or whatever you want to call it, but the thing is, I can put me in a perspective that is me, but outside me, like third person, and I can put me in every other people perspective and recreate all his or her life. I also analyze every single thing people around me does, how what he said affect what will other person thinks, reacts, says. I know how the mind of all my closest friends or whatever works, and I just simply laugh when I realize that they do what I think they were going to do. Don't know what this really means, but I think is very weird and not helpful, but interesting.
Got a new MacBook a little while back. I make music and have been using Macs for over 10 years. It's just the tool I use best at this point. Anyway, and I've noticed this before, but I feel like using the screen for prolonged periods causes my chest, spiritual heart area, to tighten up. Breathing becomes shallow, strange pain behind the eyes, and when I get off it, I'm pretty much fully dissociated from reality. Like I can see everything, but I feel 100 miles away, and it's like I'm just watching my life happen. I've been a daily meditator for over 7 years now, and it's had a profound impact on my life in general. Not to mention my spiritual growth and deepening of presence and clarity. But I think I'm also now more sensitive to what this technology might really be doing to a body and mind over time, and it makes me feel like a flattened zombie. It's annoying because I really appreciate using the machine for making music, but it is also degrading the quality of my spiritual life.
I had heaps of dissociation as a kid. Like I would constantly not be able to tell the difference between real life and other things like movies and games, so like I'm walking down the street or whatever, and I feel like I'm playing a game. The books in my school bag are my inventory, and my hands are like the hands in a game. Sometimes I'd put them in front of my face so it looked like how you can see your hands in front of you in any game with a first-person perspective. Then the world became really real. Bad things happened in my life. Now I realize life is a big fat joke, and my depersonalization is a constant state of feeling like I'm watching a movie, or visiting some strange, desolate world, human society. And this is all just simulated and preconceived for my entertainment, or to scare me or make me suffer. So a very vivid solipsism, not just like an idea or philosophical fascination. The funny thing is, every time I start thinking the world is real, some synchronicity or unexplainable event happens to me that blows all validity of science or this world actually being real out the window. It's fun. This is a good game. 9 out of 10 could do with less meaningless suffering, though.
I had a phase of dissociation for a bit over a year when I was 17 or 18. I became sick mentally when a misdiagnosis from a doctor pushed me into deep anxiety. Nothing felt real to me. It was like I was playing a video game and all I could really feel was the nausea caused by my anxiety. It stopped me doing the things I loved and I became physically and mentally weak. I really suffered during that time. I am better now and have recovered my mindset fully, although I know it is always lurking somewhere in the back of my mind. It's so draining on the soul. You can beat it and restore your connection to the world, but it is a constant struggle and the hardest thing I have ever done. But I promise it is possible.
I experience dissociation about 3 to 6 times a month. It feels like watching something that is not yourself, but it's your shell. It lasts for 5 to 30 minutes. Some bad things always happen when it starts. First, you think you are in another place, reality, or body. It's weird. Then you start to see your new place and look all over the place you are at the moment, like your house or your body. When it happens, in my case, I'll start hurting myself and feel no pain. And when it all comes down, you realize, what have you done? I don't have depression. I'm even a cool guy, but it makes me feel sad when I start to assimilate reality. I fear myself because of it. Luckily, I'll never dissociate when I'm around people. It always happens when I'm alone.
When my parents berate me, I flip into a totally different side of myself. I'm usually pretty rational and can handle problems very well, but when they start blaming me, I switch off. During this time, I disassociate and experience the environment around me as offensive. For the next hour, my mind is violent, short-tempered, and I talk through my teeth in a different voice. It used to be really bad, but it's much better now. Sucks because even after months of personal growth, I can revert to this state and it's just as intense as it used to be.
I have derealization, so dissociation is a daily thing for me. I don't think it's nearly as profound as you make it out to be. It just gives you a bit of a different perspective. You're still you, but there's kind of more than you originally thought. And it doesn't take away your feelings. It numbs them, sure, but they're still there. They're just somehow not as important anymore. For those who think it's pleasant, I'm going to have to assume your experience was quite mild. Because most of the time it's a minor inconvenience, but when it's bad, it's debilitating at the very best. Hallucinations aren't fun when you're trying to do normal things like driving. And it's not fun when you come home from a long trip and it just doesn't feel right. Or you're out with friends and you can't just chill because you don't even feel present and all you can do is try to act normal. Dissociation sucks, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, not for all the occult insight in the world.
Dissociation suffer here. A lot of you who are glorifying it have never experienced dissociation like we have. You may have it mild, but certainly not the same extreme as us. Your emotions are there. You just can't feel them like you used to. It's hard to describe. For example, I can touch something and experience the sensation, but there is this part in my brain that isn't registering that I am touching it. It can be really scary at times. It doesn't turn off for us. It goes away only when you aren't paying attention and are caught up in the moment, but you don't really notice it. It's only when we are aware of ourselves that this happens.
I don't know what just happened, but it was scary. I don't even know if this belongs on /x/, but I can't think of any other board to post it on. Last night I went round to my mates and got drunk, did about 1 gram of cocaine. Nothing special really, since I've been doing this routine for months. I woke up this morning, afternoon really, obviously hungover, feeling low from the come down, not fit to do much but lie in bed. Well, I was meant to be going back out to another friend's house, so got up around 8 p.m. and went for a shower. When I took my clothes off, standing there naked about to go in the shower, I suddenly just froze. Like how when you freeze when you remember you forgot something, but this was like remembering some dark universal truth. I suddenly got tunnel vision and began to realize that the world around me is not real at all. That if I focused too hard, or any second now, I would wake up from the dream and blip out of reality. I also felt an intense feeling of claustrophobia from being in my own body. Thoughts were impossible at this point. It was just complete fear and madness. I grimaced and let out some sort of wail, a plea to anything to help me. Eventually, I ran back into my room and just lay there with my eyes closed. It took around half an hour to calm down. I tried to watch YouTube to distract me, but noticed that my body and my mind had become two distinct entities. My fingers would type the words, and I'd realize that it's not actually me doing it, if that makes sense. It's now about 2 hours later and I feel normal again, but empty and emotionally blunted. Strangely, for the past few months I've had a recurring fear of going mental and having a schizo break. I've even somewhat romanticized the idea and thought there was some divine truth in the madness. But now that fear is gone, that full obsession is gone. Anyone had similar experiences?
You just dissociated. Nothing fancy. First time I dissociated like that was when I was 6 years old and realized I was a separate entity controlling a human body. I can do this at will now, but you were probably just scared because it was the first time you experienced it. It's not too scary after a couple of times. If it happens again, I recommend trying to stay calm and try to form an understanding of what you are in that moment and what you aren't. It has nothing to do with schizophrenia. That is a completely different thing with completely different feelings.
You had a panic attack, my guy. One of the main symptoms is dissociation, where you feel like you're not actually in your body or a kind of out-of-body experience. I'll tell you right now, it's the drugs and drinking, and it will get worse. Happened to me as I got older. I have to take it way more easy these days simply because it became a near guarantee to happen to me if I was badly hungover. First one panic attack, not another for 2 years, then one, then another, then another. Almost every single time, hangovers are related. Your body loses its ability to tolerate that shit as you get older.
I know exactly what you mean. It's depersonalization and derealization. You feel like you're in a balloon floating above your body or some guy piloting a giant robot. What triggered it for me was taking huge doses of caffeine as a teenager one day. I was just eating straight coffee grounds basically. Then a few hours later it hit me like a brick wall. No jitters, just a disconnect from reality, like everything was foreign and weird to me all of a sudden and my body didn't feel connected to my soul and consciousness. Took about a week for me to go back to normal, and no one knew WTF I was talking about when I tried to explain it.
Hi guys. I never really looked at this board for more than 5 seconds despite using 4chan on and off since probably 2007. At one point in my life when I was feeling depressed, I found out there was an organization in my city to help young people who might be at risk for psychosis. They believed I qualified, although I suspected I was lying and exaggerating things. They diagnosed me as schizotypal personality disorder. I quit my job because I couldn't handle it and then spent some time as a homeless person trying to figure out what was going on in my life. Then when I started talking to some therapists that actually wanted to talk about my family rather than just stupid cognitive behavior therapy, I realized that I have massive dissociation and my childhood and family life was clearly extremely traumatic. I am realizing that it is actually very valid that society would designate me as schizotypal. I am realizing I do have all these symptoms. I always used to believe and kind of still do that if I put my earbuds in my pocket and take them out 2 seconds later and they are in a giant knot, that does not make physical sense and the universe is screwing with me. I generally feel the same way about computers being slow or doing something, I think, I didn't tell them to do. I never really talked to anyone about this, I guess. When I was 6 I came home from school crying because I was so convinced that other people were not real. None of this would be a problem except that I think I have some negative symptoms in that I can't really concentrate on things very well and feel tired all the time. If I could just expand a little, I do not think that every time a computer is being slow that it is messing with me, only sometimes. That is not really what I wanted to expand on though. I know there are certain scientists who have an overly autistic view of schizophrenia and say that there is no connection between schizophrenia and creativity, which is clearly dumb because every music composer works at night, writers drink alcohol to loosen up the keys and get into the dream state or write first thing when they wake up, Proust and Aphex Twin advocate sleep deprivation, etc. On the other hand, when I hear people say I am a shaman or that they cast spells, I generally think they are idiots. So I guess what I'm saying is that I believe that there are some things that paranormal type people understand better than regular people. I guess I don't know what my point is. My entire life I just assumed that I was much smarter than everyone else, but in recent years I've become less delusional and realized that I'm not quite the genius I thought I was. And I do find it hard to concentrate on things and talk very fast. I talk pretty slowly, and if I smoke weed or something, my memory span becomes 3 seconds long. It is noticeably different from my friends. I can't string sentences together much at all. So in a way right now everything feels like a total mind screw because I am remembering how I felt when I was 8 and recognizing it, and I don't have this inaccurate narrative about myself anymore. I guess what I want to know is, can any of you relate? I know some scientists are idiots, but I also fear becoming stupider and less functional as I get older. I don't care about believing in crazy stuff, maybe because I've never experienced psychosis so I can't relate to how bad that is. I just find that I need a lot of time to calm down from stuff and I tend to get overstimulated. And was wondering if any of you feel like this and how to deal with it.
Not sure about all the symptoms you have. OP, do schizotypal people often think they are better than other people? A lot of these symptoms also match up with borderline personality disorder, sometimes known as emotional dysregulation disorder. could be worth looking into. Regarding the schizotypal, I think it's a great thing. When I was diagnosed with it, I just took it in stride, as I'd always known I was a bit different. On a basic level, it means you see things differently to others. So while other people might be really into sports, cars, and reality TV, we get to be excited by all manner of abstract sort of topics. Schizotypal people are definitely very creative. I go to a folk festival every year, and I'm pretty sure most people that go there are schizotypal. It's amazing all the art that they make.
In my opinion, this is all valid thoughterry. I don't feel human as much as I do feel human. I was born 1 month premature, and have been told that it is breeding grounds for differences from others, which can be called many things. Autism comes up often, but I think the defining characteristics of that part of myself are shown in the ways I react to stimuli. Before I get too self-absorbed, I will stop that talk though, because it's my belief that every human has every disorder a human can have, just different balances, all in different places on each spectrum that there is, and then the rest is brought to definition through our responses to stimuli, which is all live as if you think about it, just stimulation and your response. Sensitivity is a spectrum all its own, and could do with some exploration, but I think the best way to understand is to observe others with strong sensitivity and those with weaker inclinations. We're all only as different as our inclinations, or at least this is what I tell myself so that I don't completely unravel as I always, as anyone always is, am. I can be so sensitive as to spend vast amounts of time absorbed in self-destruction, but I try to send myself in other more outward directions. Anyhow, what I'm poking at the end of the day is that our dispositions are toolboxes we are gifted with at birth, handier than a hand of cards but much the same. If you feel crazy, use it. If you don't, use it the same. We're little more than animals with far too much anxiety inside of a highly specialized and completely free intellect. We just see and perceive in ways that confound and scare us. But man's will is free to explore beyond these perceived boundaries. What's your guys' thoughts?
OP, this is a truly, truly dreadful place to seek advice on mental health. And I'm speaking as someone with very little faith left in the mental health industry. I was even tempted to give you some advice myself, then remembered that you probably don't share my exact life experience and thus are probably not merely a younger version of myself. That's what most of the other people here are doing to you, treating you as their own failed youths. So my, hopefully somewhat objective advice is to stop pathologizing your own behavior so quickly. Normal people are completely screwed in the head as it is. Some of us are more predisposed to acknowledge our own shortcomings than others, and perhaps you belong to this ilk. Second bit of advice is to effectively internalize the idea that you are in no way special. This isn't meant as an insult. Everyone is composed of the same types of matter as everyone else. But our minds can only relate everything back to ourselves. This, I think, is where you really need to challenge yourself with logic. You could perhaps start by considering the vast difference required by probabilistic reasoning, that the objective reality exists as you see it, opposed to the idea that it does not. Simply, do you really believe that other people aren't really there? As a postscript, as it were, I have had a psychotic episode. Awful thing to experience.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.